Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Nittany Lion Sports Report. It is live here on Bob Long Sports, housed on the Sports Stream Premium Network. Again, many thanks to Bruce Badgley and his crew over there for picking us up this year, getting some great tentacles into the central Pennsylvania market, in addition to what we do here in our Philadelphia studio. My name's Bob Long. Alongside me, as always, Tyler Gehlhaus. And today, Tyler, for the first time in a few years, we come to you after week one talking about a Penn State victory, and a hard-earned one at that, 16-10 against Wisconsin on the road at Camp Randall Stadium. And now we start to look forward as we get to back to 107K strong at Beaver Stadium. They're going to take on Ball State. But Tyler, before we get that far, so much to break down about this one. We're going to have Curt Hoffman come on, a Ball State letterman, who's going to talk to us about the Cardinals, about what's going on down in Pinehurst, North Carolina. He's the starter at the beloved Cradle, which was designed by Gehlhaus, less than 800 yards, par 3 course that's rejuvenated that result. So a lot coming to you tonight, but let's start and talk about Penn State, Sean Clifford, the emergence of Noah Cain, reemergence, and so much more as we break down a victory here on Tuesday.
Yeah, what a game it was. The first half, extremely frustrating, boring, you could say, 0-0. And honestly, it just felt like the type of game Wisconsin was just going to win because they were making more plays in the first half. But all the credit in the world, and I've been very, very difficult, as you know, on Brent Pry the last couple of years and making opposing quarterbacks, whether it be Tanner Morgan, whoever, insert name here, look like All-Americans. And they did the complete opposite with Graham Mertz. And that's what won the game was Penn State's defense. The offense made just enough plays to win, but at the end of the day, it was the defense. And that was one of the best defensive performances I think I've ever seen from a Penn State defense with, what was on the table. Ranked opponent week one after the season that we had, injuries, ejection from Ellis Brooks, suspended players that didn't make the trip, that kind of thing. So gutsy performance, and to leave Madison 1-0, I always say an ugly win is better than a pretty loss. So we'll take it.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where you've seen great performances in the past defensively. I think back to a couple of years ago when Penn State beat Michigan 42-13 at home. Both teams were coming into that game on a high, and that was the game of the year at that point. Defense played fantastic, but it was the offense that kept giving them the opportunities, and the offense that held the ball for some good periods of time in a game like that. The offense was giving Penn State nothing in this game, and the defense just continued to bail them out to the point where the offense had an opportunity to catch a little bit of fire in the second half, score a couple of touchdowns, and end up winning the game that way. But it's the defense hanging that game at 0-0 going into the half versus 10 or 14-0 that really makes the difference.
Sure, and look, the defense, didn't force the one fumble that Nick Tarburton recovered. It was just a poor play on Mertz and the running back exchange. That stuff happens. Penn State took care of the ball. Wisconsin did not. Wisconsin dominated plays. They had 95 plays. They dominated time of possession. And here we are, and the Penn State defense was absolutely gassed, but they were still fighting all the way to the end, all the way to that drive when Wisconsin got the ball back and Jair Brown intercepted to seal the deal. But, they just kept fighting and fighting. And you know what? That's a culture, a big culture win right there for the program. Because the way last year started at Indiana, you almost got the sense that was going to be very similar ending. And here we are, complete role reversal. And I'm just really excited to see where this type of win, takes this team off from here.
Especially when that extra point was missed by Jordan Stout. And that remains 16-10. Of course, Wisconsin's going to win this game 17-16. There's almost no other way that the game can end at that point. But Jair Brown got the last-minute interception, the big one on 4th and goal. Jaquan Brisker. And the 3 possessions or 3 plays defensively right on the goal line to get to that point.
And even before that, I believe it was a 3rd down and maybe 8 in Wisconsin, and Mertz had a beautiful pass to Danny Davis, and he caught it at the 1. It was great coverage by Castro Fields, and they get it 2 minutes 40 seconds, 1st and goal at the 1. And then you're at the point you're like, do you let them score? Now, I didn't think that, but I know Joel Klatt made a joke about it after. Do you let them score, get the ball back? And Wisconsin fumbled the first snap, and that put them back 7 yards. Penn State actually had a really good chance at recovering that, but it set up for the heroics of Jaquan Brisker coming out of nowhere, really, and picking that ball off that was intended for Jake Ferguson there.
Of course, we're moving forward and not talking about last year, but that let them score thing is very interesting because, of course, Devin Ford was allowed to score when it was 21-20. Indiana didn't have enough timeouts to stop the clock and an opportunity to get the ball back. They let him score. Ford takes it. That was a mistake. We've talked about that at length. And, of course, Indiana comes back, ties that game, wins in an overtime, controversial fashion. So, funny you say that, Tyler. Funny that Joel Klatt said it because whether or not they decided to employ that strategy didn't matter with that fumble on 1st down. But, yes, corollaries abound as to last year's opener, this time with a much different result in favor of the Nittany Lions.
And another silver lining here that I think is pretty cool is, Jaquan Brisker was a split second late getting to Michael Penix last year for the 2-point conversion, air quotes, late. And then Saturday, he was, the reason they arguably won the game with his interception. So really cool to see a guy that could have gone to the NFL draft, would have been a mid-round draft pick, come back, preseason All-American, getting hurt the whole game, in and out, fighting on the sidelines on the bike, stationary bike to get back in there and make a play like that. And that's a play that's going to go down in Penn State history, I would assume. So
absolutely,
an unbelievable play to really a really, really good game, sloppy, but, hopefully the offense clicks and defense looks awesome.
Defense looks awesome. I think you said it with Brisker and Brown in the secondary. Great games. Brown should have come up with a second interception, but Jair Brown getting that sealer and everything that he and Brisker did, the Lackawanna connection was fantastic. Moving up, secondary, certainly Castro Fields and Joey Porter Jr. And a mix of guys. Saw Daquan Hardy in the star role. Good. Really good.
I mean, they all made plays, and it was kind of quiet because they weren't really throwing to the receivers much. Danny Davis had a pretty nice game, but Joey Porter on the 3rd down before the interception came across, swatted the ball down. The guy was right there. Without his long arms, it probably gets through.
Yep.
Just a bunch of everybody on defense played solid. I can't say enough about Arnold Ebiketie, the transfer defensive end, the block kick, the field goal in the first half. Huge. The sack.
The sack that was a fumble.
The tackle for losses. The quarterback hits. Unbelievable. He even got hurt at one point, was in the locker room, came back. And another guy who I've been hard on over the years is Ellis Brooks. He was unbelievable until he got thrown out for the targeting penalty, and he'll miss the first half, obviously, of Ball State. Not really sure about that call. It is what it is. But Jesse Luketa, first game as a defensive end, and I thought he looked really natural at that position.
The tough thing with Ellis Brooks coming out, though, is you don't have enough depth at the linebacker position. He almost has to become your middle linebacker.
Well, and that's the other thing, as we talk about Ball State here a little bit is, and for the rest of that game was Penn State doesn't have the depth at defensive end either.
You're right.
So you had to take Luketa really to play middle linebacker against Wisconsin. And then you're really just left with Tar Burton and Ebiketie, who was banged up for the most part. And I guess that's why I kept thinking, all right, 95 plays, whatever, time of possession, these guys are dead. Now you lose Brooks. Essentially, then you lose a defensive end, too, because of that. And you're just like, is there enough in the tank? And they just kept fighting. Honestly, it's extremely impressive.
Yeah, some snaps for your guy, Charlie Catchier. You talk about him a lot. He's had some injury issues.
It was good to see. He got a nice quarterback hit in there, too. Yeah. And they're going to need him. I mean, especially with Ellis Brooks out. Not that he plays the middle, but you're going to need depth. Injuries are going to happen. Targeting, unfortunately. I don't know if you saw the Ole Miss Louisville game last night. About like 5 targeting calls in the first half or whatever.
So a lot of uneasiness and disappointment and anger related to these calls. All I can tell you is when they released the updated set of rules and points of emphasis, there was a continued point of emphasis and will be a continued point of emphasis on player safety, on targeting, and so that will continue to be the case. There is a lot of groundswell to just make it a 15-yard penalty, kind of like a flagrant 1, a flagrant 2 in basketball. The flagrant 2 gets you ejected. I just think it's really tough in this age of college football and this age of football in general and player safety, all of which are good things. It's tough to roll something like that back and say, you know what, this player safety measure that we put into place, that's great. It's protecting players, but we're going to roll back that penalty.
I have no problem with protecting the players, obviously. The part that actually, I'm going to go back a little farther. I don't understand the fact that this play wasn't going to be reviewed until Wisconsin called a timeout.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was extremely strange. I can honestly say I've never seen that before, where they're going to take a timeout and then, I guess, ask for it to be reviewed. Yep. So if they didn't take a timeout, Ellis Brooks, nothing happens.
Yes, that is correct. I think that the right way to look at that is you see that hit in real time. That should be an automatic go to the booth and review.
It was a fierce hit.
Yeah, and it was high, and
Ellis Brooks did lead with his right
shoulder. But it gets tough because then there's helmet-to-helmet contact, and Mertz lowers the head a little bit.
You could, it's almost like holding. Like you could honestly review targeting. It would be a 6-hour game if you really wanted to dive that far. But there's a lot of plays
I think you
like
know
that.
it when you see it, and that was one that they.
Yeah, I actually don't think it was targeting.
Oh, I get you, and I understand that, but something where. In the past, we've seen the booth review a call like that.
Yeah. You know what? The problem that I have with it is the inconsistency. I mean, I was watching the Ohio State-Minnesota game on Thursday night, and to me, there was a blatant targeting that
much worse than
wasn't even called targeting. In fact, they overruled it and said that it was now a fumble, too.
Yep.
So
which was a bad call.
It was totally like whatever. But I really, it's one thing for it happens in the second half. You're out the rest of the game. I'm glad the player can stay on the sideline. Send him to the locker rooms, like a total punishment, in my opinion. But the fact that now Ellis Brooks or anybody then has to sit out for the first half of the next game, it's just it turns out to be literally a one-game suspension, more or less, when you really think about it.
Sure. Oh, that's exactly what it's intended to be.
That's a lot when you have a 12-game season. That's 1/12 right there.
It is. I don't think it's the right thing, but I just. Where I'm coming from, Tyler, is collegiate athletics, football in general. There's already this idea that they're exploiting college football players. Now, NIL changes that a little bit. And you have a safety measure. I think the penalty is far too stiff. I'm just acknowledging the difficulty in rolling something like that back. That's all I'm trying to say is I think it's going to be tough to see any type of change as much as we'd love to see it. But again, they'll be without Ellis Brooks first half against Ball State.
And they should be okay without him for the first half of that game.
I would think so. Yep, 22-point spread. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But I want to
also, sorry, real quick, shout out to Ellis Brooks. It was probably the best 3 quarters of a game, call it a game for him that I've seen him play in his time here at Penn State.
He has always been very anticipatory and understands where and when he needs to be. Physicality was there in this particular game, and it was exciting to see.
He showed
Leadership is there. You can tell he's the leader of this defense, calling out the signals, smartest guy on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Love to see it because I did like Ellis Brooks.
I was pleasantly surprised with what I was seeing until he got thrown out.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And they'll have that asset over the course of the year. Again, defensive line, Mustafa, just a rock and needs to continue to be so. Ebikete, great. Tangelo, okay, in his first game out there. Want to see a little bit more from him. Luketa, great at the defensive end position.
I would say Tar Burton did okay as well.
Yep.
He was Johnny on the spot, as Gus Johnson said, for the fumble recovery. Almost had a nice interception.
Mm-hmm.
Probably should have had it. Tough play for anybody, let alone a D lineman. But he did some nice things. I think, getting Hakeem Beamon back soon. I'm not sure what his status and reason for not traveling out there was, but that'd be nice. He can play a little bit end, a little bit inside. That'll go far away.
Yep. So I thought the defense was, again, very, very good. Wisconsin, we talked a lot, or information was fed to us about, this isn't going to be your grandfather's Wisconsin team. In many ways it was. A lot of pulling athletic guards. Good running back transferred in from Clemson, had a really nice day. And he had great vision. It looked like Penn State was getting pressure or getting movement into the backfield, but they weren't getting the angles in all those cases, and the blockers did a great job wedging and creating openings for that running back. And Penn State did a great job bending but not breaking. And, again, excellent against the pass. Really, really good all day long.
No big plays.
Yeah.
Even really through the running game, there were no huge plays. I mean, they maybe had 1 or 2 runs for about 20 to 25. But other than that, they held them in check.
Agreed. Wisconsin has some questions to answer. I think they're going to have a tough season if they can't move the ball, but their defense is going to keep them in a lot of games.
That defense is really good, especially that linebacker group.
Remember, the coordinator is Jim Leonard.
Right.
Remember the NFL safety played a lot of years with the New York Jets.
That's right. But they actually didn't have their best linebacker or second best, Chanel, for COVID reasons. So that was a big break for Penn State that they found out about an hour before the game because, I mean, those linebackers were really good to begin with.
Really
and
good.
Then you take probably the best or second best out, and that helped Penn State a lot.
Certainly did. So, yeah, Wisconsin questions to answer. Fortunately for us, that's not exactly our focus tonight. But I think as you look in the West, Wisconsin, Iowa, right off the bat look like two teams that are going to be tough to beat. Maybe one of those two represents the West in Indy this year for the Big Ten championship game. But, of course, we're worried about Penn State, and we're worried about the Big Ten East. Let's move it to the offense. Mike Yurcich's first game as offensive coordinator, Tyler. The very first thing that jumped out to me, especially in the first half, was the lack of involvement from Noah Cain and really the running back core as a whole. We saw that change in the second half. Noah Cain, 2 really big moves where they got the ball out to him in the passing game in the flat, and you got your playmaker into space against one defender. And at that point, scheme goes out the window, the athlete wins, and Cain won both of those huge plays for Penn State.
Did his maybe not the long run, but the little catch on a 3rd down where he was short of the line of scrimmage, or the first down mark was like 3rd and 4, made a guy miss, put his foot in the ground, cut back. That reminded me of Saquon at Iowa a little bit.
No, it didn't.
Not at all. Really. That's the first thing I thought of.
Nah.
Okay. Well, that's what I thought of.
No.
That's exactly what Saquon was doing in that game. The whole game.
It was.
But this was 2 plays right here.
That was a wonderful play.
Yeah.
Saquon is a different animal than
I'm
Noah
not
Cain.
saying that they're the same, but those 2 plays were very, reminded me of him in that game.
Well, listen.
I'm not comparing the 2 at all.
Of course. Yeah, no. But when Mike Yurcich came in, right, the thought was we're going to get the ball out quick. We're going to get it to our playmakers. That includes the running back. Put him in space. And again, football guys, they'll talk about this. If you get a guy into space one-on-one against a defender, then you as the offensive coordinator or the quarterback, you've done your job, and now you put the ball in the hands of that playmaker. Scheme has won. Now it comes down to the athlete, and Cain was good enough to win those.
Yeah, and I think that's really the good halftime adjustments Yurcich made because the first half, I mean, Clifford looked lost. The line, they were running crazy stunts. The Wisconsin defense had trouble picking it up. Happy feet, locking in on receivers, and you're just kind of like, this is the same thing that we've seen the last year and a half, 2 years or whatever. And then he made a big adjustment with getting the running game going outside.
Yep.
And Penn State did not have a successful day on offense really at all, let alone, running the ball. But that simple adjustment of getting the speed and the guy running back outside really opened some things up because Wisconsin was loading the box there, and it was really too much to handle for the Penn State line. I would have liked to seen some more quick hitters as the day went on, but again, the 2 most explosive plays were the long passes to Dotson. So
right, and that outside run that you're talking about, maybe we can do a whiteboard when we get that thing up and hanging again here in the studio, our blitz segment, but zone blocking schemes versus you're in between the tackles, right? Maybe you're pulling a guard. Maybe you're just taking care of your gap. A zone blocking scheme gets the boundary into play a lot more. And the difference between that is you're picking up your guy in more of a power look where you're bringing somebody pulling. That's power. bringing the left guard over to the right spot and overloading there to take on the second level linebacker. That's power. Then there's just traditional blocking schemes where you're picking up A gap, B gap, right? You're taking care of the guy right in front of you. Zone is you're moving your linemen from side to side, and they're responsible for a portion of the field. And that's what they did really well in the second half with Noah Cain there, the ability to get your linemen moving, get Noah Cain moving to the outside, and you're blocking an area, and you're trusting the instincts of your running back to pick the time to cut in or just take it to the boundary. Noah Cain's really good at that. The one thing is he's not the fastest guy in the world, so I'm in some ways a little bit surprised that it was as successful as it was, but his intelligence and his ability to pick the right spot, kind of like again, now we're comparing running backs that are like all world, right? The Le'Veon Bell type of patience, that's what you see sometimes when you get into zone blocking schemes and what types of running back can be really successful.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more on that, and I think, too, the offensive line stepped up more. The offense collectively, 16 points isn't really going to win you many games. This one, it did, and in large part to your defense, but the halftime adjustments made were really, really good by the staff, and I think that going up against a defense like that, an environment like that in the first week of the season, you might have another environment or two that are tough, like Camp Randall, Kinnick Stadium, Ohio Stadium, but I don't think you're going to go up against a tougher defense than Wisconsin.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's a great win. I really do.
It really is, and it was ugly, but like I said, an ugly win is better than a pretty loss.
Yeah, and that does not mean, by the way, don't mistake my words or Tyler's, that the offense has figured things out, because they have not. There's a lot that they still need to figure out.
And we, not just me and you, but usually that takes a little bit to get going.
Sure.
The offense, especially new offensive coordinator, that usually takes a while to get going. The defense, I didn't think they'd be that far advanced at this point in time. Hopefully they can keep playing at that level. But yeah, I mean, it was like you said, or like I said earlier, 0 turnovers. That's actually the turnover battle to be +3 like that. I mean, considering you didn't really I don't think you had more yards than them and the time of possession, but the turnover battle.
So if you were to turn on a Wisconsin Beat podcast right now, that is exactly what they'd be saying. And that is exactly what Penn State was saying against Indiana last year. Mm-hmm. Again, we keep talking about the parallels. Right. Penn State was the Indiana of this game, and Wisconsin was the Penn State of last year's game. And that's not to say, I mean, Penn State, I think, outmanned Indiana a little bit more last year than Wisconsin did Penn State. This, in my mind, was a toss-up going in. However, Wisconsin moved the ball better. Wisconsin had more scoring opportunities. Wisconsin, their quarterback.
Oh, my God, he let them down.
I mean, that was brutal. And so if you're turning on a Wisconsin podcast, they're saying the only reason we did not win that game, we being Wisconsin, is that they turned the ball over. And they are correct, by the way.
4 turnovers in the red zone.
They are correct. And a missed field goal.
A blocked field. Right. I mean, that's big-time points, but I'm not complaining, and I know you're not.
No, of course not. And Penn State deserved a lot of what they got. I just think if they turn the ball over 1 or 2 less times, maybe it goes to overtime. Absolutely. Or maybe Wisconsin wins. And that is going to be the key. We talked about it with Sean Clifford. His misses need to be outside and to the turf, not inside and high. They were inside and high last year, and they resulted in a ton of interceptions, and the turnover battle was lost badly. I mean, it's the only reason they lost that Nebraska game, for example. But I need to heed my own advice. We are not talking about last year. The Nittany Lions win a big one against Wisconsin, 16-10. Let's talk about the wide receivers only because we teased it and talked a lot about it in our projection of the depth chart show last week. We saw a lot of Parker Washington. We saw a lot of Jahan Dotson. We saw a lot of Keandre Lambert-Smith.
I believe they were the only receivers that were actually targeted. We did see your LaSalle buddy, Winston Eubanks. He was in there for a little bit. Wasn't targeted, but did get some run along with Cam Sullivan-Brown. I believe they were the only 5 wide receivers to get snaps. Could be wrong, but each of those guys made a couple plays. I thought Keandre Lambert-Smith grew up a little bit in that 40 or so yard reception. He had a second and maybe 6 or so that he dropped. He took his eyes off of it, and the fourth quarter there.
That was
would have been a first down.
Big drop.
It didn't hurt him.
Didn't hurt him, you're
but
right.
It could have, and it was a big drop. But
Strange ended up having, and we'll get to tight end. Strange had a pretty bad drop as well. And then came
a really tough catch.
Tough catch.
I thought he should have made it.
Should have made it.
I have high standards for the tight ends there.
Should have made it.
Not the easiest catch in the world, but
then the very next play, Noah Kane gets it down to the
exactly.
same yard
So
line.
those two drops didn't hurt them. But I mean what you saw from the wide receiver group, I think you're gonna pretty much see that kind of game every week. And Dotson, I mean, I think he had maybe 5 or 6 for a buck 2 and touchdown, and he could have even had more. He was overthrown on the one, would have been another 60-yard touchdown or so, and he was getting past that defense in the second half like it was nobody's business. I mean, they weren't even close to him.
Yep. Well, and that's back to that game at the line of scrimmage and getting the running backs involved. The more you run the ball, the more successful you are, the more you have to creep that strong safety up.
Exactly, and that's why I'm very optimistic about this offense still, because they weren't even, Penn State wasn't even able to run the ball, and Sean Clifford was able to make some throws.
Sure.
They're going to put an emphasis on getting this ground game going, and that's going to open it up so much more for Clifford and Yurcich. And I think you give it a couple more weeks here, probably by the end of the month, and it's really going to start to click.
This is the Nittany Lion Sports Report. It's live here on Bob Long Sports, housed on the Sports Stream Premium Network. So, Tyler, as we move past this Wisconsin game, let's talk for just a few minutes about what comes up next. 4 straight games at Beaver Stadium. Ball State comes up, a conference winner last year, a team that won by 10 just last week in their opening game. Maybe not quite as strong as we expected Ball State to look, though. And I think a game that sets up really well for Penn State. The betting line is at 22. The week after that, Auburn at home, the whiteout. Then Villanova comes to town. Oh, boy.
Whiteout 2.0.
There you go, baby. The Wildcats, longtime interstate rivals. Come on. We've been talking about Villanova Penn State for years. I wasn't specific enough. I wanted a basketball matchup.
Yeah, right.
Not a football matchup.
That'd be pretty fun. Little back-to-back, but it'd have to be later in the season. The schedules just don't really allow for that, but that would be cool.
It would be cool if they could do both in concert. I wasn't even thinking about that, but
and then not to cut you off, but then that cuts out September, and then the fourth game is Indiana at home October 2nd. Who looked absolutely dreadful against Iowa. I'm with you. I like the way this sets up. A lot of people were, we'll wait and see what happens out in Madison. Even if they lose, but they look good. That's it. They won. They look good for the most part. Obviously, we just talked about that. Man, if they don't win all 4 of these home, I'd be shocked if they don't win every single one of these home games.
You'd be shocked if they didn't beat Auburn, huh?
I would be. I mean, I really would be. I don't think Auburn is that good. Now, granted, they're a good SEC team. They I think they had Akron last week. Can't remember they have Akron this week. Whoever, but this is going to be their first real test. New coach coming into a whiteout, 7:30 next week. Tough environment, and I mean, the fans are going to be juiced up. And I don't see a letdown game. Of course, we haven't seen Penn State play Ball State. We don't know who's going to be healthy and all that, but I'm feeling really good right now about this Penn State team. I thought Indiana was going to be a tough game this year. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case, or as tough as we had thought at one point. I'm looking right now as the next really tough matchup. Obviously, Auburn's going to be a tough matchup, but that Iowa game in early October after Indiana is the one I circle as a possible loss.
Sure. At
this point.
I would not be shocked if Penn State lost to Auburn in that game. I just think Auburn and the SEC, they've acquitted themselves very well thus far. I know they don't speak for the entire conference, but you have a Power 5 program, a team you don't play very often, a team being tested, they will be tested at the highest level at the SEC level. You have an experienced quarterback. I don't think that's an easy game, and I don't think Penn State's offense gave me any sense that any game against a Power 5 opponent is definitely going to be a walkover. So I think there's definitely a reason to show up, and I would not be shocked if they lost that game. I would be shocked, however, if something happened not according to plan against Ball State. I think this one's a win this weekend, but I think it's a nice matchup against a team that can play from the group of 5. It's
right.
a nice 3:30. Certainly can't let up, or you could have an issue here.
Think back to 2018 against Appalachian State.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
my bachelor party.
That's right. This team is returning more seniors and or super seniors because of the COVID year than any other program. I mean, they bring back almost all their starters, which I think it's great for Penn State because you should win the game, but you're also going to be tested, and that's what you're looking for right now.
And let's be real, that 31-21 win against Western Illinois, you talk about not a trap game for Penn State looking ahead to Auburn. I mean, that's Ball State looking ahead to Penn State. They're going to be ready to go. Make no mistake about it.
Absolutely. They're a good team.
Yep. And I think it's going to be really tough. I think the 3:30 start on Fox Sports, it's a nice profile game for Penn State. Perfect time to watch some college football. Bob Long Sports, we are going to be coming off the field as LaSalle takes on Imhotep in a high school football game in Philadelphia. That's the game of the weekend across the state. Imhotep, Keon Wiley, Penn State football recruit, Eni White, who's not going to end up coming to Penn State but was on their radar for a period of time. Now he's looking at the Alabamas and the Ohio States of the world. But that should be a great game there. They've beaten DeMatha Catholic, who everybody seems to know very well, and Pittsburgh Central Catholic, who our folks on the western side of the state will know well. So that's Imhotep's resume. They're taking on LaSalle. We're doing a college game day special, by the way.
That'll be neat.
At 11:30 in the morning, right in front of Springfield High School, expecting at least 100 LaSalle students there with signs in hand. And so check that out on Bob Long Sports. But a perfect afternoon. Tune into what we got going at 1, LaSalle, Imhotep. And then Penn State, Ball State at 3:30.
Pretty cool, too. I mean, there's a Penn State commit on each team. Imhotep with Keon Wiley, LaSalle with Abdul Carter, and LaSalle's got a really good running back in Sam Brown who's going to Rutgers. So it should be a really good, entertaining game. And if you're a Penn State fan and you're in the area and you're looking for something good to watch before Penn State plays Ball State, head on over to Springfield.
Yep, no doubt about that. So that's the story here from at least the way we see it. Penn State, huge win against Wisconsin. Yes, things to learn, but these are the types of wins that you need if you want to string together a season. Penn State has won in the right direction. Maybe not quite as impressed as you were, Tyler, with Sean Clifford. I think a lot of improvement still needed there, but kept his wits about him. I think that throw to Jahan Dotson was a great example of him moving his feet. Noah Kane got a nice little block there to take care of a defender for at least a period of time. Eyes downfield. Jahan Dotson outran the safety. That's a great throw.
Yep.
There were some issues early in the game. And
he had jitters, and we've seen that before.
That's not good.
No, it's not. And
not an excuse.
I was certainly surprised that he didn't turn the ball over at all.
Yeah.
I really was at the end of the day.
Yep.
So
his misses a lot of times were in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
And last year they were not.
But there were a couple balls that he threw in the first half that easily could have been picked off.
And that's true, too.
Yeah. I can only hope that – I'm not going to say he's turned a corner because he didn't look phenomenal or anything like that, but if he cannot turn the ball over, I think that goes a far way.
Yes.
But he's still going to have to make plays. You can't just be a game manager.
Yes,
you still have to make plays.
I do want to see them continue to utilize guys like Noah Kane in the flat, the running backs, tight ends, getting them involved as well.
Easy passes.
Yeah.
There really weren't many easy throws that they had him set up for early in the game.
But I appreciate him seeing the mismatches, seeing the things down the field, waiting long enough to see those plays develop, right? I mean, it takes a while for Dotson to get off the line, get 15 to 25 yards down the field, and then find himself open.
Right.
So you can't have happy feet. You can't be necessarily needing to get the ball out that quickly at all times. On those throws, I think he did a decent job.
Mm-hmm.
And so that at least kind of starting from that, I guess, that way to look at it is, hey, there were some times, 3 or 4, really good throws down the field where he waited for that play to develop. And that's something that potentially we're looking on to build on.
I agree, and I think he is just going to be talked about for better or worse after every game, I think. Just because we really don't know what we're going to get with him week to week, and I think that's just where Penn State and the fan base is. It depends what Clifford's going to do. And a lot of times that's going to be right, and, that's just how we're going to have to live and die.
Put that on repeat. We'll be talking about that just about every week. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. We have a very special guest picker here tonight, Curt Hoffman, Ball State letterman and former minor league baseball general manager, and now current starter at the Cradle. If you want to play the Cradle, you're going to have to talk to our buddy Curt Hoffman. He is the man down there in Pinehurst, North Carolina. We met while I was down there earlier this year, became good friends, figured out he was a Ball State guy. We've been talking about this game for a while, so we'll address that next here on the Nittany Lion Sports Report, and then we'll get Tyler and my picks as well.
Dunphy Ford is Mayfair's neighborhood Ford store.
Nobody knows your neighborhood like Dunphy Ford.
Nearly 40 years.
Right here on Frankfort Avenue.
Generation after generation. Our neighbors continue to be our customers. We have access to the cars and trucks you want with financing you need.
Dunphy Ford is Northeast Philly's first choice for America's #1 brand. 7700 Frankfort Avenue in Mayfair. Online at www.dunphyford.com.
Come experience the Dunphy difference. You'll be glad you did.
We're now excited to welcome to the Nittany Lion Sports Report a Ball State football alum, Curt Hoffman. Curt, welcome to the show. Thanks for being the picker today.
Yeah, good morning. Nice to be talking to you from Pinehurst, North Carolina, where it's a gorgeous morning. A lot of golfers were setting records down here for rounds of golf every day.
Yeah, that's right, and we'll get into a lot of that. The story goes well beyond your time at Ball State, though you did play football at Ball State. You were up there for a reunion last week. And, yes, now you are working at Pinehurst Resort, one of my personal favorite places to go play golf, to get away for a weekend. And you are the starter at the beloved Cradle. 700-plus yards, 9 holes, a par 3 course that has really rejuvenated the resort, which didn't really need much rejuvenating, of course. But what a great place the Cradle is. Could you tell us a little bit about your job there?
Yeah, well, the administration here at the resort decided back in 2016 that if they wanted to remain as one of the premier resort destinations in the world, they needed something like this. And so they brought in Gehlhaus, the gentleman who did the Olympic course down in Rio in 2016. And we designed a 9-hole par 3 course that's been just a tremendous hit, far more than anybody could have realized. We opened it in September of 2017. And I've been here. I was there for the opening, and I'm still here now. We're doing probably 100,000 rounds a year here, which is a lot of golf.
That is a lot of golf. That's fantastic. How did you get into that?
Well, it's just, my career was from Ball State in the mid-'60s. I started teaching in New York. Coaching football, coaching lacrosse, and for 15 years or so, I did that in the suburb of New York City, same county that I grew up in, Westchester County, which is just north of the city. And in 1981, I got an opportunity to work for the Texas Rangers, so I left teaching, and I was the general manager for their Florida State League team in Daytona Beach, Florida. That was a great time in Daytona. The 80s were rocking, so to speak. But I met a young lady down there, and we married and moved back to New York, where I this time taught in the Catskill Mountains, which is about 3.5 hours north of New York City. Wonderful little community of about 6,000 people. It looked like it came right off a Norman Rockwell painting. And I coached baseball up there. They didn't have football. The school was too small. I coached baseball in the spring, and in the wintertime, I was the Alpine ski coach. And that gig up there lasted another 15 years. So 30 years in New York, I retired, only to be pressed back into action in Charleston, South Carolina, as the athletic director and women's fast-pitch softball coach, as well as teaching advanced placement history and advanced placement psychology. So Charleston, South Carolina lasted another 15 years. So 45 years in, it was time to call it a day and come up here and buy a home in Pinehurst, where my youngest daughter and her family live. And as much as I love Charleston, you don't keep your grandchildren or from grandma. My wife wanted to be close, and it's a great gig. I came here just at the right time. They were bulldozing acreage to put what is now the Cradle in, and I've been here ever since. As you well know, we've played around.
Yes, we have. We had the opportunity to play together. And we'll get to the Cradle in just a second, but some of our Penn State fans, I'm sure, are also baseball fans. So minor league baseball and running a minor league club. If you could share a story or two about that, that'd be emblematic, or give folks a little bit.
Well, you know, I was tutored by a great mentor. His name was Chuck. I can't think of his last name now. Gosh. He was a former general manager of the Evansville AAA team, and he had retired. He was actually I think a staff sergeant in the Army before he got into baseball. But he was the man that taught me everything about how to run a minor league club. Great guy. It's just a great job. In the off season, you're talking to all the sponsors, all the people, businesses that you see out on those outfield walls. You're selling space in the program that's going to be sold throughout the season. You're setting up those dates that everybody loves in minor league baseball: bobblehead day, bat day, glove day, helmet day. You know, the way that works is you work with local businesses. For instance, we'd do business with the local McDonald's, which was owned by one group. And so they would underwrite the cost of the bobblehead or the helmet. And then we would give them literally thousands of tickets, and then they would use them at their restaurant. You know, you come in, buy something at McDonald's, and you get 2 tickets to the game. You know, things like that. And we did that with all sorts of business. And the ball players were sent to us by the Major League Club. And as a matter of fact, in 1985, I had a combination of Baltimore Orioles and Texas Rangers personnel. Had young Bill Ripken, who was always a challenge to make sure that he was in bed at curfew. But it was just they play. The Florida State League is probably still is the premier single A league in the country. The big clubs love to have their best players there because they're playing in the very best facilities for single A ball. The home stadiums in the Florida State League are the spring training sites. It's where the big clubs play their Grapefruit League games. And so the facilities are tremendous, and the Florida fans get to see great games in just wonderful stadiums. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I wanted to get back to teaching and coaching, but certainly it was just a great experience for me. You know, so that's it in a nutshell.
I appreciate that. That's good intel for folks that are interested in minor league baseball. It's a unique racket for sure. Now, I know you have to get to your shift at the Cradle coming up here, so we'll get one quick one on the Cradle, and then we'll pick some football games if you have just a couple of minutes. But tell us about the Cradle, about Pinehurst, and anything that
avid Penn State fans that might also be avid golfers might want to know.
Yeah. Listen. Yeah, I'm happy to do that for you. The resort, of course, is world renowned. We actually have, including the Cradle, we have 10 courses to pick from down here. If you come and stay at the resort, okay, we have a menu of golf courses that are unsurpassed. The famous number 2, of course, where the U.S. Open is played. Number 4, which was the course that Gehlhaus redesigned after he finished the Cradle. We had that back open with his design in 2018. But we have designers like Maples, Jack Nicklaus, Fazio. I mean, all the great designers have at one point worked on Pinehurst courses. And, you're staying at just historic old hotels. The Carolina is just gorgeous, 1895, followed by the Holly Inn, which was right around the turn of the century also, and the Banner Inn. And there's even condos and villas that you can all book through the resort and play any one of those 10 courses, including number 2. So it's a wonderful golf experience for all of you, your listeners and your Penn State people. We'd love to have you come down and experience what Pinehurst has to offer.
That's great. I'd highly recommend it too. As a guy who's been down there, plans to go back again.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to having you and your wife back.
Yeah,
so let's talk Ball State football.
Absolutely. Tell me about Ball State.
Well,
you're letterman. You were up there. What
I was just on campus. Last Monday through Wednesday, actually. I watched the football team work out just a couple days before they opened their season last Thursday night against I believe it was Western Illinois. And they won 31-21, but I expected more from them. I thought I saw early on over the months before that they were ranked up in the top 30, although I didn't see that recently. So I'm not sure where they ended up in the preseason rankings, but they handled Western Illinois, I guess, pretty easily. But the problem that I see playing Penn State is their depth. I think they'll give the Nittany Lions a run for their money in the first half. The second half is going to probably be problematic. I think they'll get worn down a little bit. But it could be a very good ball game, I'll tell you. I see the betting line is 22.5. So you and I have a bet here for golf in Pinehurst. So I'm hoping that the Ball State Cardinals cover that spread.
Right. We shall see. It should be fun.
Yes, we shall see, right.
It should be fun to watch. Let's make a couple quick picks and then get you out of here.
All right. You got it.
5 games, and then the Penn State game. Penn State game is always against the spread. So the other 5 are going to be straight up. Let's start with Oregon against Ohio State, the Buckeyes.
Yeah. If I saw correctly, I think Ohio State's about a 14-point favorite. I'm going to go with Ohio State. I think it'll be a good ball game, but I think Ohio State will win.
Strong team. They are fantastic. C.J. Stroud playing well at quarterback, replacing Fields. How about the Battle of Iowa, an old-time inter-conference rivalry, Iowa State against the Hawkeyes?
That's a good game. I don't know. What's the spread on it? Do you know?
Yeah, I got it as it says Iowa plus 3.5. Iowa State's ranked in the top 10, but Iowa played fantastic last week against Indiana.
Yeah. I think this is I know. I think Iowa State's going to pull it off.
Iowa State. And then we're going to go another interconference, NC State from the ACC.
Right up the road from here.
That's right. Mississippi State, Starkville.
I haven't read a lot coming out of Raleigh from the NC State program, but listen, I'm a transplanted Tar Heel, so I got to go with North Carolina State.
There you go. Okay, North Carolina State it is, and then we'll go more out of conference. Texas, the Longhorns against Arkansas. So some changes on both sides of those games coming into this year.
What's the spread say on that one?
Got Texas -6.
Yeah, wow. I'll take the Longhorns.
The Longhorns. All right. Brand new coaching staff down there. Sarkis playing a team he saw in years past as the offensive coordinator of Alabama. Curt has the Longhorns. And then we're going to go Washington, +5.5 at Michigan. Two programs that are
that's Michigan looked pretty good last week, huh? I don't remember who they played. It wasn't much of a game, right? They sort of ran over them. I'll take Michigan. I'll go with them. I usually don't. I like to bet against Michigan, but I'll take it for this week.
That sounds like fun. And finally, it's our big game. Ball State against Penn State. We'll give you that spread of 22.5.
Yeah.
Big game, at least for us.
I don't think the Nittany Lions are going to cover. I think it's Penn State, but less than the spread. I'm thinking maybe Penn State by about 15, maybe 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, that's doing your letterman duty, taking the team against the spread. That's great. Yeah.
But it'll be an interesting game for sure. I'll be up in New York at another reunion of sorts of my championship lacrosse teams from 1975 and 1978. So I'll be up in the Hudson Valley at a party in Rhinebeck, New York, when the game comes on at 3:30. I saw it's being televised by Fox 1, so I'm going to try and get some sort of electronic device to get the game to me while I'm sitting there at the party.
That's great. Well, enjoy that. Good luck getting that game up on the phone. And thanks so much for taking a couple minutes with us on the Nittany Lion Sports Report prior to your shift at the Cradle. And again, go visit Curt at the Cradle. And when you get down there, tell him that Bob Long Sports sent you. He'll be happy to take you.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Always good to see Bob Long people down here.
Appreciate that, Curt.
All right, Bob. Listen, buddy, take care, and I'm looking forward to seeing you. And we'll talk after the game.
We will.
See if Penn State covered the spread.
You know it, Curt. All right, be good.
All right, Bob. Take care.
And thanks again to Curt Hoffman. It was great to have him on the show, hear his story. And, yeah, he's a Ball State guy. We let him on the podcast just this time. But now time for us, Tyler, to make our picks. Same games. I'll let you read them off, and we can go from there.
All right, Bob. You want me to read all of them or go one at a time here?
Yeah, let's go one by one.
All right, one by one. We have an interesting big noon matchup. Pac-12. Oregon Ducks, cross-country to Ohio State. Should be an interesting matchup. Oregon doesn't look like that their star player, Kayvon Thibodeau, is going to be going. Big-time defensive end, likely top 5 pick. Hurt his leg in their opener. But anyway, the Ducks against the Buckeyes.
Yep, Ohio State. Ohio State is the class potentially of college football right now. We saw Clemson take a big step back offensively. We have not yet seen that with Ohio State. They played a decent team in Minnesota, and I think they acquitted themselves well. Problem there is defense, as we saw. Minnesota scored too many points, something I'm looking out for, but it's not going to be the difference in this one, Ohio State.
Yeah, I think that if Thibodeau was playing, it'd be a much closer game. I like Ohio State, especially at home. But I do like the Buckeyes. Their offense looks pretty good right now. Defense still has some question marks. But I like the Buckeyes to win here against Oregon. We're going to stay in the Big Ten a little bit here. Iowa with a huge win over Indiana. Looked very convincing, looked dominating at all points. special teams, defense, offense. The Cyhawk, they travel to Ames, Iowa. College game day will be there. They take on the Cyclones of Iowa State in a big in-state rivalry.
Yeah, I saw the spread on this one. Iowa plus 3.5. Can't say I understand that. I know that Iowa State was thought of and is ranked very highly. They didn't look good. Iowa looked really good. Give me the Hawkeyes on the road, and I know that's a tough thing, but I like Iowa to win this game, representing the Big Ten.
Yeah, it is kind of a goofy spread, and that's telling me something. And I'm going to go Iowa State. I think that they were overlooking Northern Iowa, and I think just last year Iowa State lost to like Arkansas State or something like that early in the year. I don't know if they just don't play well against these group of 5 teams, but they have to be ready this week. I think they will be ready. They have Breece Hall at running back, Brock Purdy at quarterback. I think they start clicking, and I think they win in a really exciting game in Iowa.
Yeah, Tyler going with the smart money there. That's
for
sure.
There we go. Next, we have NC State at Mississippi State.
Interesting game for sure. I'm going to go Mississippi State. I don't think either team is great. I think both teams are decent. I'm going to go with Mississippi State strictly on home field advantage.
I'm right there with you. Home field advantage and Mike Leach, the crazy pirate or whatever they call him. I don't know. I know more about Mississippi State than I do about NC State, so I'll go with the Bulldogs.
Okay.
We have an interesting night game, 7 o'clock. The Longhorns of Texas travel to the Razorbacks to take on Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm going to take Texas in this one. I think this is another game where home field advantage could easily make the difference. Texas, 20-point win over Louisiana. I'm not sure what to take out of that game, but I think they're going to find a way under Sark to get a victory. I would probably take the points. I would take Arkansas if we were taking it against the spread. But I am going to take Texas to win this game. Call it a one-possession game one way or the other.
Yeah, I like Texas too, mainly because I saw them play a little bit this week and I didn't see Arkansas. That's literally my only reasoning. And I thought Louisiana was going to beat Texas, and Texas came out and won by 20.
Yeah.
For that reason, I'm not going to let the horns fool me again. I'll go Texas. The night game on ABC, Washington coming off of incredibly, I guess you could say, embarrassing defeat against Montana, 13-7 at home. Preseason top 20 team. Now they have to travel to the Big House to take on Michigan, who looked pretty good against Western Michigan. I think better than some people thought they would look. So Washington Huskies at Michigan.
I am taking Michigan here. I don't think this is a world-beating Wolverines team. Washington loses that game. It is possible that they find something within themselves and come back and win this game. I don't see it this time around, though. Michigan to win this game in the Big House.
Yeah, I'm right there with you again. And the reasoning is the same, so I'm not even going to say it again, but I got Michigan as well. And finally, we have Penn State, Ball State, 3:30 FS1. Penn State, 22-point favorites as of right now. Bob, give us your score, and then obviously that'll go if Penn State covers or not.
Yeah, I do like Ball State to cover in this game, and I think it's going to be, let's call it 28-14 Penn State. I think Clifford does get off to a little bit of a slow start again. I am not confident in this team to score enough points to beat somebody, a team that I think is pretty decent, by 3 touchdowns, 3+ touchdowns. So I got Ball State, and I think pretty comfortably under the spread. I think this has a chance to be a tight game. Maybe it's when I say 28-14, maybe I think it's a late score for Penn State to put it away at 14. But I believe there's every reason to watch this game into the fourth quarter.
I'm right there with you again. I mean, all of our picks are kind of similar here between the three of us. There's not much separation.
We're waiting on Iowa State, Iowa.
But I'm going to go Ball State to cover. I like Penn State 34-17. I think this is a little bit of a trap game in the sense that you're coming off a huge win. You might be looking ahead to the whiteout a little bit against Auburn. And Ball State is no slouch. I do not think Penn State will lose a game. I just think it'll be closer than a 22-point spread indicates as of right now.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Ball State, I'm not one to find the arbitrage in Vegas lines, but Ball State didn't play as well last week, I think, as maybe folks anticipated. But you talked about all that talent coming back, or at least that continuity, if nothing else, with all those starters on a good team from last year. This is their Super Bowl big game. They're going to find a way to stay tight for a while.
Absolutely, and I think it's going to be a great atmosphere up there, too. A year without fans at Beaver Stadium. This will be a nice little tune-up, get everybody's vocal cords back and ready for the following week when the Auburn Tigers come to town.
Looking forward to that, and like we said on the whiteboard here, exactly what you mentioned there, Tyler. We are back to 107K strong.
Penn State also has a 5-game winning streak carrying over from last year, one of the longest in the country right now. Probably outside of Alabama.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's a couple other schools, but I can tell you who doesn't have a 5-game winning streak, and that is the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah.
2-game losing streak. Ohio State and then Georgia.
Yep. And just a field goal. DJU.
How about that?
Not quite what we expected. Good for them. I'm happy that I picked Georgia. That was a tough one for me.
That was a good pick. You went against Ryan and I, but I love that UCLA pick that I made last week.
That is a good one.
And that
Sissy blue shirt.
Sissy blue, that's right.
Eddie Orgeron. I tell you what, when they go play Ole Miss, you know what color jerseys Ole Miss is
Same
wearing.
colors they wore last night.
Yeah, that's right. The Sissy Blues. That's how we'll end it, folks. The Nittany Lion Sports Report. It's here on Bob Long Sports, housed on the Sports Stream Premium Network. He's Tyler Gehlhaus. I am Bob Long saying so long, enjoy the football, and we'll see you early next week to preview the whiteout.